the beast, we've cornered him. Draw your weapons. Prepare yourselves. Charge!
Welcome to the Raiders Confessional, the podcast for all things raiding in the world of Warcraft.
How's it going, Raiders? My name is Ryan. This is TRC episode 13. I'd like to start off today by throwing out an apology. I know our episodes have been a bit sporadic, and there's been quite a bit of time between episodes since we did the AMR Part 1 series. But I think that if you guys will manage to stick with us through this episode, we'll kind of tie into what we want to talk about today. But for those of you who may or may not know, myself, Dan, and Cole were all in the same raiding guild, and I was the raid leader, an officer. Dan was the guild leader, main tank, and Cole was just one of our general raiders. Well, like with anything in life, all good things must come to an end, and prior to this episode, we had kind of reached a point where it was in the best interest for everybody involved, myself included, to kind of have me step away from being an officer and just be a regular old raid contributing member. And then the writing slowly started, becoming clearer and clearer on the wall. And eventually the guild broke apart and a bunch of people went their separate ways. So again, that, and then amongst some other things, the hurricanes down in Texas where Cole is at, kind of set back some other times. We had initially planned on recording this episode and getting it out to you guys. So that was another setback. And then, just kind of discussing some things with Dan. Dan had actually a couple weeks back had taken the initiative to kind of step away from the podcast. Dan has recently been married. We want to throw a big congratulations out to him and his new wife. But it was kind of pretty clear for them that it was going to be better for them to focus more on them starting a family, being freshly married, that kind of stuff. His wife is going back to school, and so I think with that being said, again, guys, we would like to throw a big apology out there to you guys. It's it could have been better handled, and it was definitely sad to not be able to continue to bring these episodes in a timely manner to you guys. We really do love doing these episodes, and again, so just a big apology. But today, I'd like to go ahead and talk about what kind of happens and how do you handle being a part of a group of people, a guild, and it does reach that point where either you as the individual or the group needs to kind of bring things to an end. How do you handle that? How do you handle people leaving? How do you handle officers or crucial leaders stepping down? And then what ultimately do you do once that guild is no longer raiding, and it's time for you to find a new home or step away from the game. So before we go on to get to that, like usual, I would like to introduce my co-host. Cole is with me today. Cole, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Man, I can't complain. Been joining a new guild and back into the mythic raiding, so I certainly can't complain. But I know you have been kind busy. But you've been kind of taking a break from WoW lately.
Yeah. So after we killed Jaden, heroic, what was that? About a month ago, 2 months ago, something like that.
About a month, yeah.
About a month. And then we just we're trying to get into that mythic game, but everything just seemed to start pointing one direction where we weren't going to have enough members. And then for me, it felt like just thinking of doing heroic content until the next patch comes out. I don't know if a lot of people felt this way, but it was just one of those, well, we're not going to progress. We're going to farm this content to death. Kill Jane just got nerfed after we killed it. So there's now no challenge of the re-kill. It just came to a point where I was just like, well, I'll take this time to step back before the next raid starts, and play other games, play other Blizzard games, play anything and everything that's out now because there's so much, and that's basically where I'm at.
Sure. Well, and you've also had some other additions in your life.
Hurricane. Found out my wife is pregnant, so that happened. All of that kind of also contributed to the, taking a break for a little while until the next content comes out, which I am definitely looking forward to playing. So I'm not quite out of the rating yet, but we'll have to see if I follow you to your new guild or just do LFR or whatever. We'll see.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and I think that's kind of the beauty of this show is, while, yes, our main focus and a lot of our content here on the show was more focused on progression rating, we are not adverse to talking about the LFR scene or the normal or heroic, just the more casual rating scene. I like to think that we cover rating as a whole and can provide viable content for everybody who, likes to dabble into the rating, be it from a casual standpoint or a hardcore progression standpoint, so I think in moving forward, when you can be on the show and stuff like that, even if you are just doing it from a casual perspective, it'll be nice to have that additional viewpoint.
Yeah.
Table,
I'll definitely, I'm still even considering coming and trying out for your Mythic Guild and seeing how that goes. But right now, I'm just having fun. I'm not worried about logging on and getting characters geared or anything like that. And it's kind of nice. So,
yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, and I gotta say, like you said there, man, I joined a new guild and I'm back to my final year of college. I started this whole college project in 2005 and been slowly whittling away at it ever since then. So it's kind of surreal that this is the beginning of the end, kind of like with the Legion, This is the beginning of the end, and next expansion will be on to a whole new story and that kind of stuff. So, it's, joined a new guild. One of the other guild members from our old guild came with, and we're having a lot of fun over there, seeing some progression. We should be downing Sisters this week in Mythic and on to Desolate Host and Mistress and so on and so forth. But it's been fun, man. It's been nice to kind of see the thought and the picture I had painted in my head of what I wanted out of this game and this content and the raid scene, finally kind of coming to fruition, if you will. That part has been really, really nice. And I gotta say, even when I stepped down with from the officer position when we were still raiding with our old guild, getting to start to play the game again in a non-leadership position was refreshing, and it really allowed me to kind of enjoy the game more so than I had been. And that's not to say that I wasn't enjoying the game before. It's just I think the better way to describe it is a different type of enjoyment. It's much stressful in a lot of much less stressful in a lot of regards when you're not in a leadership position. It's, and I said it before, when you're running a guild, man, it's like herding cats at times.
Yep.
And it's not even really, a lot of times that's not even because people are purposely dicking around in raids. It's just when you have that many people that you're trying to organize and make sure everybody's online at the right time, make sure everybody's focused up, it's just, it can be stressful, So I think with today's episode, we've already kind of introduced the topic. I'd like to kind of start with, from beginning to end, really. So I guess the biggest thing to address here today is, how do you kind of deal with, or what happens when, if you're in a leadership position, or on the other side of things, if one of your leaders kind of reaches a point where they need to step down, what all goes down with that and how do you handle it? And I'd like to approach it from the perspective, how do you handle it in such a manner that things turn out as best as possible? And hopefully that means that your guild can keep thriving and living on. Ours did not, sadly, but I still think that our experience can be useful to people out there. So I'd like to start there. So I guess that's really on me.
Yep, that's all you.
Right, yeah. So
because I have the easy job of just, raiding and killing dragons. That's it.
Sure, and I think it's prudent to maybe start back in the beginning. Back at the end of Warlords, when I had come back and really hit the leveling alts and getting ready for kind of this expansion, is kind of when I convinced you to come back, and I had found Dan, and we started this whole process of building this guild, and you tagged along. Dan and I, and his now wife, and one other officer at the time, had kind of spoken in what we really wanted out of this game. And we'd all kind of at that current time said, none of us really wanted a return to hardcore raiding, and when I say hardcore raiding, I mean like, a minimum of 3 days a week, 5 hours at a time. Right. Once you've surpassed the double digit in terms of hours spent raiding in a week, I think you're kind of encroaching on the hardcore turf, And so none of us really wanted to go down that road. None of us really wanted to deal with raid leaders and stuff that were yelling at the raid, or being a part of a group that if you missed one raid, you lost your starting position. We were all of the mindset. We were a bit older. We were no longer in our 20s, and we wanted a place where we could get stuff done and kind of be up against a challenge, but at the same time, not really feel obligated to ensure that challenge was overcome. And, so we wanted to have kind of this medium point, or a balance, if you will, of both, the best of both worlds, where, if somebody needed a night off, that was fine. They could have a night off. If you just weren't having it that night, you weren't feeling well, you could step away and that kind of stuff. But realistically, I think, which most people in our group can tell, see and say now, is while yes, it is possible. Don't get me wrong. It is possible to have that situation, but it takes a shit ton of work. Somebody really has to be the driving force to ensure that everything is met. And it's very, 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 very hard to achieve that, which was the case with our guild. I can't say how many times, Cole, and I think you can attest to this too. We would build the guild up over 20 members. We would either A, be right at the cusp of stepping into Mythic, or be into the first couple of bosses in Mythic for a tier, and then people would start dropping for various reasons. And the whole process would start all over again.
Yeah, I mean, just as a normal raider, not being an officer, I would always see the revolving door, and I know that was a lot of work for you guys. I would get frustrated just because I hate getting pugs that expect to be, I guess, carried through that content. But from your side, you guys must have been really frustrated. All that forum searching and spamming, trade chat, trying to find people. But I think right now. So, I mean, we do have to talk. We've been a guild for over a year, right?
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a long time for a guild, I feel. We did do a lot of Mythic content in Nighthold. I want to say a lot. I mean, it was only 4 bosses or something like that, but still, we were pretty cutting edge up until, I always call it the expansion blues, because it seems to be right before another expansion hits or before this one ends, people start just dropping out or getting I was going to say disenchanted. Disheartened by the, I guess, farming and stuff like that. But yeah, we were right there.
Yeah,
doing mythics. We were ready.
Yeah, and part of the other downfall too is we had, and this isn't to take anything away from or negatively shine light on people in our group, but we also were really pertinent, and adamant that we weren't going to be super hardcore and boot people for subpar performance. You know what I mean? As long as people were, we always said the magic marker of, we would try and hope that everybody be at or above 50 percentile for their item level, and then obviously we took into account certain fights that was just unrealistic, because of the amount of cheese that goes on and stuff like that. But, we just wanted our group to be of average performance and stuff like that. And we and we set the bar very, very low with, a number of required artifact traits and all that other kind of stuff.
Yeah, it seemed to be more, I say, friend guild than hardcore guild.
Yep.
And that's something that we talked about a lot. Do we keep it friendly, or do we push people to the point where they don't want to play? But it seems that people who don't want to play will just not play or play well.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's kind of where this whole story begins, because it was, And I don't want to say that I was kind of the catalyst that brought the end of the guild about, but I think me stepping down an officer kind of marked the beginning of people either stepping down or stepping away from the raid team that inevitably led to the end. It just seemed like it was one after the other. And so I'd like to start there, like I said, and kind of what happened was, I was putting in so much work for the guild, and Dan was doing a lot of work too. But I mean, there was days like I was creating characters on other people's servers and leveling those characters just so I could pay for an in-game mail to send to them in hopes that I could reach that potential recruit before other people could get a hold of them, because the forums it's just a shark pool there. If you're not like the first person to respond in a matter of seconds from the post going up, you can pretty much kiss those recruits goodbye. It's pretty competitive.
And how do you feel someone posting on a forum? Do you feel like that's someone who's going to want to join a casual guild? Because I feel like if they're going to go out there and post on a forum, they're going to be one of the ones that are like, okay, I want to, be a mythic raider. I want to do this. Like, how many did you find that just wanted something purely casual?
You would find them. They're there. Majority of the people, though, are like you're talking about. They're looking for a bit more of a hardcore setting. But again, when you're looking for more of a unique type situation, the forums are a good place for you to go so that you can kind of look for that specific setting, be it a day, certain days, certain times, a certain type of hardcoreness. And especially if you're coming from a smaller server, it's not always easy to find guilds. And so the search you may be looking for guilds on other servers, you know what I mean? And how do you do that without kind of finding a communal place that you can do that? And the forums offer a good opportunity for that.
Yeah. And I guess that kind of leads to, maybe Blizzard could have a better system of in-game guild. I mean, we could talk about that later.
Sure.
In-game recruitments and tools, and because there's a lot of people who play the game.
Yeah.
How do you find those that fit your same, outlook or personality, like group personality? But anyway.
Yeah, no, the answer is trial and error.
Not too sidetracked.
Right. Yeah, no, that's fine. Trial and error, and that's definitely something that I have kind of jotted down on potential show notes for future episodes, which I will address here at the end of this episode. But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of what I was saying is I was putting in a lot of time and effort, and kind of, like I said, the picture I had in my head of what I wanted out of this situation, with each day passing, it felt increasingly more like what I wanted out of this wasn't coming true. And then that compounded on top of the fact that I was working my ass off to try and make that happen. And a lot of times it felt like my efforts were in vain, right? And sometimes it was just the nature of the beast. It was the way things were, and there was nothing I could do about it. And other times it was because some of the other officers wanted things done differently. You know what I mean? So I won't go too far into detail, but there was a certain incident that really just kind of didn't sit right with me. And Dan and I have spoken at length about this specific situation. But I only bring this or mention this because I feel like it could be of educational value to those who are trying to run successful guilds. You are going to have points of disagreement. It's just inevitable, when you have that many people in a room, or in a guild rather, it's going to happen. And so it also felt like at a certain point, the percentage of work being done by officers was very lopsided. Some people were doing a lot of work and others were not. And I just gotten to a point where all of that pent up frustration and hard work, with people leaving and recruitment being so incredibly difficult, it felt like I was banging my head against the wall. And, I kind of had a point where Dan and I discussed all this. And then I reached a point where I realized that the picture I wanted was never going to come true. And so, there were some of the things in my life that were happening in school. I was about to start school back up, and this right now is the heaviest class load I've ever had in my collegiate history. And like I said, I started doing this in 2005, and I've only taken a few semesters off here and there. And then I've got a girlfriend things are really serious with now. She and I are currently living together. I'm working on top of all this. At that point in time, and even now still, even with the hiatus of the episodes, podcasting has become a big interest of mine. I really like doing these episodes. They provide a great outlet to kind of shoot the shit and talk on these subject matters that we all, like to talk about from time to time. And so I kind of realized that I wanted to spend my energy focusing my efforts elsewhere and also just go back to generally just enjoying the game and not have to worry about, if I move this healer into this group, is that going to spell success for us in this progression attempt tonight, and not having to worry about those little things was a big relief. And so I inevitably stepped down. And so my whole point with this segment is I'd like to say the biggest thing to keep in mind, and I think this starts on the individual level, is we all pay our money for our own reasons to play this game. And if you are finding at any point in time you are not happy, I would really start with looking at, what is the cause of that unhappiness? Is it something that you can fix, or ultimately solve? And if the answer is yes, then I would encourage you to make the changes necessary to do so. But I would also encourage you to do it respectfully, especially if it's going to affect others. Don't just stop showing up with no explanation to your raid team. Don't just log off and G quit. Have a conversation, be adult about it, and let people know, hey, this is what's going on. I'm just not happy right now, and this is kind of what I need to do to reach that point of happiness again. And genuinely, I find that if you come at situations in that respect, things will turn out amicable. People may not always like the situation, but you'll typically find that people won't act adversely to that, or malicious. And that was kind of the outcome that happened when I talked to Dan and the other officers and just said, hey, here's what's going on. They didn't like it. It wasn't, it kind of came out of the left field for them. This is something I've been mulling over for a while, but I had a conversation. I stuck around and I continued to show up for raids. And, even for the first couple of weeks, I would, whisper Dan or some of the other officers and I tried to be as tasteful as possible so I didn't step on any toes to kind of just allow those reins to transfer as smoothly as possible. And so again, I would like to encourage everybody, find out what's causing your unhappiness and try and make that change. If you're not happy playing this game and it starts to feel like a job and a chore that you don't enjoy, then there's really no point. You know what I mean? Because you're not doing yourself any good, and you're certainly not doing anybody else around you any good. It's part of what makes this game fun is the community around you and everybody being on the same page, be it from a competitive standpoint or just an enjoyment standpoint. Some people view this as more of a social outlet. Other people view this as a team to be a bit more serious with. You know what I mean? And so you need to find out what makes you happy. And if you're an officer and you're feeling like your efforts aren't being rewarded, or one of your other officers is constantly disagreeing with you, and if you feel like that's causing your group to be held back, or just whatever your reason be, have a conversation with them, let them know, and if ultimately you're not happy with the outcome, then maybe it's time for you to move on or step down. And there's nothing wrong with that, but in that part of sometimes with stepping away, that might mean whatever roadblock was in place may be the right removal to allow your group to succeed, and I felt like I was becoming more and more grumpy in raids. I found myself increasingly getting to points where I wanted to snap on people in raids, people who didn't deserve it. And I found myself being a bit more rigid with my policies in raids and my tolerance for things in raids. And it was kind of increasingly becoming more and more negative and not really helping the situation. And so I felt like at that time I was kind of at a point of no return where the only solution was for me to step away, both for my own happiness and for the guild's success. And so again, just take a moment, take a breath, take a look at the situation, see what's going on, what the cause of the unhappiness is, and go from there. But do it respectfully. That's my biggest concern. Just make sure you guys do it respectfully. Honor the fact that other people have put in just as much time and effort in this game, and your decisions may affect them. So try and do it as respectfully as possible. The next point I'd like to cover here is, again, I think the commentary we could provide would be the same, but if you're a raider and you're reaching a point where you're no longer happy with the game, my advice would continue to be the same. Would you not agree, Cole?
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
Because I know you've reached points in your game. I think you've consistently played the game longer than I have. I think I've taken more breaks, but I think you have jumped back and forth more between casual and hardcore than I have. I think I've always been a bit more just hardcore every time I played this game. I don't do much casual. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you don't. when you get into something, you're pretty much balls to the wall. So from my perspective, though, I just want to play for the story pretty much. Just like with this podcast, whenever you ask me to do something, I tend to do it. I don't know why. Maybe that's friendship, but we definitely, I don't know. I had a good time for the most part in the guild, and I'm still friends with most of those people, right? But when it comes time to think about, I'm going to farm this content for the next X amount of months, is that something that makes you happy? And if it doesn't, then I feel like you should step back or do something else, or maybe trade characters. But if your guild allows that, I guess. But yeah, there's definitely more to the game and more to life than, being unhappy raiding and committing time or wasting other people's time if you're not happy doing it, right?
Yeah. And I think that's a good point to talk about for a second, Cole, is like, let's say you are unhappy with a character, and let's say your guild is a bit more hardcore, and they just don't want a 7th Fury Warrior in the raid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just would be unrealistic. All of a sudden that makes their melee like 15 melee to 3 ranged, makes doing mechanics hard. I mean, not impossible, but just, it's not worth the time and effort when they can recruit something else. And you realize that the only thing that you're going to be happy playing, or the only thing that you're just dead set on playing, is a Fury Warrior. That may be a sign and a time for you to maybe go move on, go somewhere else. Because again,
well, even looking at like your guild, you have, I think, 2 other demon hunters. It's like even 1 demon hunter seems to be too much for Mythic. So having 3, if I was to join, would be outrageous. I know guilds are killing them with more. Well, I don't know if guilds are killing it with more demon hunters, but it's a very underrepresented class in Mythic, especially the final kills. There are a few, I think, but yeah, it's one of those things. Does it mesh well with your guild if you continue playing your favorite character? And if it does, then I think that's a place for you to go, because then it's not all about, who does big deeps. It's about having a bunch of people who are enjoying playing the game. And I think that's what I'm looking for. And I think maybe you have found it, but I don't know. I haven't joined yet. So
yeah, so far it's been great. And when I look at a group of people I want to play with, very rarely, if ever, has the specific class I want to play been the deciding factor. To me, it's more about, is everybody on the same page with their goals with raiding? Are people actually wanting to get into progression and see progression happen? And if at times, like, I may want to play a Shadow Priestess next year, but if we have 3 other Shadow Priests in the raid, I may not be as happy, but I can find myself still happy nonetheless playing an Ellie Shaman, or my Death Sherlock like I'm playing right now. And that's fine, because to me, my main source of enjoyment is progression, and if I got to do that as a healer, as a tank, as a melee DPS, or range DPS, whatever, I'll make it work. And because again, like I said, my main source of happiness is not the class I'm playing. It's the content that I'm trying to overcome. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, I think that's another thing people need to look at is what is your source of happiness, and try and find a group that fulfills that level. And so again, like I was saying, if you reach a point where you're just dead set on playing a certain class and your group doesn't really have room for it, or isn't allowing it, then that might be a clear sign, right, wrong, or different. It's time to move on. Or just come to terms with the fact that you may be stuck on the class you're on, or you need to find something else to play. And if the answer at that point is, well, God, I just don't really have time to level another character and gear it out, well, then you may not like it, but it might be time of, guys, I just don't really have time to level a character. I took 2 weeks off at the beginning of the expansion to get my character caught up, and the only really time I have right now is just to keep the one character I have at current level,
Yeah. I mean, one caveat to that is the legendary system, right? Because we could level alts all day, but not having the perfect combination of legendaries is really going to hinder some classes, and that's pretty unfortunate. I think next expansion, they'll probably improve upon the system or just get rid of it. But right now, if you were to start a level 100 character or whatever from, or even a character from scratch and level it up to 110, you would still have a hard time of getting any legendary that you truly want. And that may prevent you from raiding altogether.
Sure.
So
and I think you see less and less of guilds requiring people to have specific legendaries than you did maybe at the beginning of the expansion. I think for the most part, most of the guilds I've encountered have been pretty dead set on, can you just perform? Can you stay alive? Can you do mechanics? And can you pull decent numbers? Can you carry your weight, essentially?
Yeah.
And so, there's some even more hardcore guilds out there that, will look at even the nitty gritty details of like what legendaries do you have, and they may say no at that point, but very rarely do I come to that occasion. But I think the big takeaway from a lot of this conversation is if you, the individual, is looking at where you want your home to be, I wouldn't settle. I would advise nobody taking a point in time where they just hop at the first guild that comes their way and settling for whatever it is. There are so many freaking guilds out there. I can't tell you how many times when looking for a new guild, I'd advertise the 2 days I was looking to raid, and all these guilds would approach me, but they were like 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. guilds. Well,
oh my gosh.
What? Or they were 11 p.m. or 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., just these weird obscure hours where you could clearly tell the majority of the people in that guild were night shift workers, or they were Australians playing on US servers or whatever, and so even if your situation is just so utterly unique that you just think you may not be able to find a home, I would advise you not to think that way, and I would advise you to hop on the forums and look around, especially now with game tokens being a viable way to provide for game services. Server transferring isn't as taxing as it used to be, so if you have to go to another server to find the home that you're looking for, then it's out there, and I know one of the things that you were talking to me about is you kept trying to tell me that, we may never be able to find the situation you're looking for. And it took me about a week and a half longer than I would have liked, but I think I found one. And like I said, we've only been over there for 3 weeks or so now. But things seem to be working out so far, and only time will tell. So the kind of the last point I'd like to talk on this subject before we kind of address how some more of the news about this show moving forward, I'd like to talk about, what do you do when your guild is breaking apart? And to kind of start this segment off, I'd kind of like to start off by saying our guild, our name was Axis of Ignorance, and we were on US Sargeras. And I'd like to just kind of take a moment to genuinely say, I'd like to say a big thank you. Like Cole said, we have rated or been a guild for a year now. We went through one name change because there were a bunch of cross-realm communities that had the same name as us, and there was a whole nother ball of wax to deal with from there. And so we went through a name change. At one point, we lost 3/4 of our raid because of one toxic person being booted out of a raid.
That was crazy.
Yeah. And so, we went through a bunch of ups and downs as a group. We went through a lot of rebuilding. We went through a lot of successes. We went through a lot of very frustrating nights where we either had to call raids, not raid at all, or go do farm content for 100th time. There was a lot of fun nights and a lot of not so fun nights. But overall, we had a very active community. Discord was being blown up almost every single day at all hours.
Yep. Yeah, that was fun.
And so I think it would be, rude of me to not, or disrespectful of me to not look back fondly on the time that we did spend with that group and say, I'd like to say a genuine thank you to everybody who's been a part of that group, whether you were there from day one or a small fraction of the time, no matter whether that time fell at the beginning, middle, or end of our stay, or stint rather, as a group. I'd just like to say a big thank you to all the members who have come and gone through Axis of Ignorance on US Sargeras. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah. But I kind of like to get your take, Kill. Let's say you're part of a group, and I know you've been kind of on this receiving end of the situations because you're more prone to just kind of ride things as they are. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so more times than not, when a group's fall apart, you're typically just one of the innocent bystanders. You were never one of the people who were advocating for changes or pushing back against loot rules or whatever, or complaining against people. You were just kind of always like, just tell me when and where I need to be. And so you were inevitably at the situation of, oh crap, our group's falling apart. Now what do I do? And so I kind of like to talk a moment about, let's say you aren't somebody who needs to leave, or you're not an officer needing to step down or go find a new home. Let's say you're one of the raiders who all of a sudden shows up one day and your guild's no longer there or no longer raiding. What do you do from that standpoint? And so I know like you Cole, you took this opportunity to take a break from the game and kind of go do some other things in life and play some other games,
Yep.
Go ahead.
Well, a bunch. So basically, what happened is we kind of had two factions in the guild. One that wanted to be hardcore, one that also kind of wanted to be more hardcore, but didn't really want to be, if that makes any sense. Kind of business as usual. And what ended up happening is that hardcore group kind of just got to the point where they're like, okay, I can't get what I want out of this. I need to go. So what happens to, basically what happens to that one group who is like, well, I don't want to go hardcore necessarily, but I also now no longer have a guild. And so what happened with that group is I took a break. Others started to, I guess, merge with another guild to try to make that work. And it seemed to be semi-successful, but not like when you're a part of a guild that's killed, a heroic in-game boss, and then you can no longer do that, you kind of get frustrated. So I think as a casual raider at that point, those people were like, well, I can just quit the game, which most people seem to have done from that little casual group, or you try to find another group that fits your needs, which others took that route. So from a raider who just comes online and your guild's broken up and you get a guild message that says, contact whoever to find out what happened, like it's kind of a shock. And I don't know where people go from there if they had no idea what was going on at all, other than to, I guess, try to pick up the pieces. I know that I took a break, but as someone who still wants to play the game, as you said earlier, there's tons of guilds out there. It's just finding the right fit, which can be hard after you've been with a group for so long that we have. How do you, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think the takeaway from all of this is just inevitable. This is life. I feel like every guild goes through this. I don't know of one guild that's remained together. I mean, I'm sure they're out there. I'm sure there's plenty of guilds who are like, well, we've had our core group, we've top 100 or whatever long ago. But from all the years I've been playing, I join a guild and they break up. Maybe I'm the problem. No, I'm just kidding. But eventually, like all good things seem to come to an end. And we've even seen it with the high-end mythic guilds this expansion, where they call it quits. So yeah, it's just the nature of the beast, it seems. Yeah, and we know people that are still together since even vanilla. But if you even talking to them, they've gone through so many different renditions of their group. They may have like one or two original players.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? The only thing that's been consistent is the guild name. You know what I mean? And a lot of those guilds have changed servers as groups, and people come and go. Groups break up, reform, stay together, don't stay together. At the end of the day, I think the biggest thing you have to remember is every single person in this community, whether you are in the United States, in China, in Australia, we all pay to play this game in our own respect for our own reasons. And to not continue to do so or try to force that to work even when you may not be doing so is not okay and not right. I think, you need to maintain your individual level of happiness and play this game for the reasons that you want to. But at the same time, I think, and this is something I've tried to convey through our previous episodes up to this point, is when you're a part of a group, I think there needs to be an understanding that you're not the only person in that group. Your actions and your presence has an effect on everybody else around you. You not showing up to raid could absolutely mean that raid doesn't happen for that evening. And to not be cognitive, at least just to recognize that is a fact, is not right to your group. But on the other side of that coin, it's not right for your group to be so unrealistic that they don't let people have nights off if that's what people want. You know what I mean? Like if, that'd be like me telling Cole here, who Cole and I play this game for very different reasons. Telling Cole that I don't care if he only wants to play this game for story. If he ever wants to play or be my friend for the rest of time, he has to continue to show up for all raids, no matter what. You know what I mean? And that just wouldn't be right. But it also wouldn't be right for Cole just to not show up one evening and not say a word. And so again, guys, make sure you are maintaining your happiness, but at the same time, just try and maintain a sense of community and respect everybody else around you. And I think if everybody can do that effectively, even if it does mean that just through the natural course of things that your guild just wasn't meant to be and wasn't meant to be long lived or no longer thriving, so be it. But just try and maintain some level of respect and keep the fun going. And this game will continue to be the awesome game that it is, I think, for everybody involved. So I think we've kind of yapped this discussion to death. I think we've kind of informed those of you that, have been listeners since the beginning, or even just recently or new to the show, kind of what's been going on, what's brought us to this point. And kind of, I'm hoping we can provide enough firsthand knowledge of what goes on in these situations to help maybe advise or provide an example of what to do or what not to do for your groups moving forward. I would like to take this last few minutes to talk about what does this mean for TRC, for the Raiders Confessional. And I do have some good news here. This isn't isn't all sad news and tears here over at the Raiders Confessional. I have taken this opportunity to kind of sit down and reassess, what were some of the things that we did that spelled success for us here on the Raiders Confessional? What were some of the things that didn't work out so well? I can safely say that I am got some refacing to do of the show, and I'm already working on it. I have a new personality, a new face, a new co-host that will be more than likely joining us on the show. This is not completely set in stone yet. If not on a permanent level, this person will be here on a semi step in when they have the time type thing. Just all going to depend on when we can record and time stuff like that. But I will make sure I have more personalities, and Cole here will his seat as a co-host is always his to have if he wants it. But we're going to be bringing the show back, guys, and we are going to be doing, I have a new intro outro going for you guys. I'm going to have some new topics. We're going to continue to do our role specific episodes and our first looks at each tier coming out. And I'm looking to have the show, kind of start coming back to its every other week episode and start hitting the iTunes and all your different various podcast listeners listening devices out there very shortly, with closer to the release of Antorus. So we're going to do some restructuring of format. We're going to start to kind of brainstorm on some new topic ideas that we can tackle, start lining up some scheduling with some interviews, that kind of stuff now. Because a lot of our stuff that we did up to this point was last minute. It was kind of just trying to fly by the seat of our pants. But I can assure you, this show is not going away. It is coming back, and it is coming back as a 2.0. We're going to have some new faces, some new topics, new intros, outros. I'm hoping that the show will sound better. And I would definitely encourage any of you guys listening out there for the first time or for the first time. Did I say first and first? I did, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
So for the first time, or if you've been a long time listener, no matter what the case is there, get a hold of us. Let us know if you have any topics you want us to cover. If you have any situations that, kind of some weird things that have happened with your group or you in raiding that you want us to cover. And we certainly will do so. But again, I'd like to close out with a big thank you to anybody and everybody that took part in any of the raiding that we did with Axis of Ignorance, and any of those of you that even were never on the raid team but were just in the guild to kind of hang out. It's been fun, and I hope that we can all stay in contact. And
yeah, it was definitely a good time. That was like anything, that was a good time to be alive, I guess, if that makes any sense. But you join these groups and you don't expect to meet these people, but when you do, you want to go hang out in real life and have a beer or shoot the shit. So that's definitely what I've always been looking for out of this game is, the story mostly, but also the community behind it. And Yeah, thank you, Axis, for providing that for the short amount of time that we worked together.
So for sure, that's going to do it for us here today, guys. Again, I'd like to say, it's been fun. It's been an interesting year, and I was hoping that this guild would at least last the entirety of the expansion, but writing was on the wall, and so be it. But it's been fun. So I would like to encourage each and every single one of you listeners out there, though, if you haven't already, go on over and check out Dan on his social media accounts. You can get a hold of him at his Twitter account, which is JacksonGad1125. Or you can find him in his stream. I don't know how much streaming he's been doing. I think he and his wife are taking some time off to just kind of enjoy themselves. Yeah. But what little streaming he does do, if any, you guys can find him at JacksonGad1125 on Twitch as well. So go say hi to him. He's still a friend of the show. And he's not without, the option to be a guest on the show and pop in as a host from time to time. We'll just kind of have to see how things play out and that kind of stuff. But like I said, he still is a friend of the show, and we wish him all the best. And man, Dan, if you're listening, go do you, man, and enjoy being married for a while, buddy. So Cole, I don't think you have yet to find some social media, huh?
No, maybe TRC 2.0. Maybe I'll do it then.
Yeah, for sure.
But who knows, right? Probably not.
Yeah, well, maybe you should get it started, and then when Cole 2.0 pops out,
right,
we can maybe train Cole 2.0, be it boy or girl, to run the social media accounts, so you don't have to.
Yep.
But
that would be simple.
Yeah. So
he could farm for me as well.
Right. Yeah, we've dealt with that one in the past. We've had a guy in the guild who paid his kid to do all his farming for him.
Yeah, that was interesting.
So another conversation there. But as for myself, guys, you can find me over on the other show I do, Blizzard Umbrella, with a good friend, Dusty Porter. He as well as Cole, was affected by the hurricane and some other stuff. So we had about a month break there too, and we're back strong on that show as well. So go check us on over there. We talk all of Blizzard games. It's a blast. But for myself, you can find me on my personal accounts, which are McIrish Gaming, both on Twitch and Twitter. But for us here on the show, you can get a hold of us on our Twitter account, which is @_TRC podcast, or you can get a hold of us at our email account, which is theraidersconfessional@gmail.com. There is no apostrophe on the S, guys. But please, guys, we'd love to hear from you. Maybe throw us some topics you'd like us to cover moving forward. I'm going to take a few weeks here to kind of get some new intros and outros built. Like I said, get some formats in the books and get more of a rigid structure in the sand so that we can keep bringing you guys good content. So say hi, suggest some topics, ask us questions. But as for me and Cole and any of our future hosts, guys, and for any of our past hosts and guests, it's been fun, and we'll talk in the next episode. See ya.